We live in a day when sickness, disease, and obesity are considered normal. And yet, these diseases that we're suffering from and dying from today were hardly in existence 100 years ago. But there is a reason, and that reason is we are eating foods that are creating these physical problems. And the physical problems we are experiencing are merely the body reacting to the wrong foods.
What has eluded people up until recently is the major thing that they're doing wrong, and that is that they're fueling themselves improperly. They're taking in the wrong kind of food. The kind of diet that people live on is such a serious burden to their body that it protests with all kinds of illnesses. The blood pressure goes up, the cholesterol goes up, the triglycerides go up, the blood sugar goes up, the joints ache, they get fat, they get constipated, they get indigestion. Why? Because it's the wrong fuel. Throughout most of history, people were trim and healthy and hardworking, and they lived on simple plant-based diets, except on special occasions, on holidays, on festivals. The common person could only afford to do this once in a while. However, in every society there were some rich people. And these rich people, they came to the party and they said, "Oh, this is so much fun. I'd like to do this every day." And so they could afford it. So they went up the hill to their castle and they had the festival for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. And do you remember what these aristocrats and kings and queens looked like? They looked like Americans. That's what they looked like. We've developed the richest diet known to humankind. And that diet has been available to everybody, even if people are poor. It's the cheapest food available. It's king and queen food. Back then they used to serve it on silver platters. These days we serve it between styrofoam leaves, but it's basically the same kind of food. White bread, meat, grease, sugars, and that kind of rich food makes people fat and sick. Always has, always will.
The biggest health challenge that we're facing right now in westernized and industrialized countries is heart disease. In the United States, we have 4,000 heart attacks every single day, and rates in other countries are very, very similar. Our second cause of death is cancer, and there's no mystery that smoking is linked to lung cancer. If we can take smoking out of the equation, we're going to lick that disease almost entirely. What's been really striking is that the other very common forms of cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer in men, colon cancer, uterine cancer, have links with diet that perhaps 2 or 3 decades ago we wouldn't have guessed. Diabetes is something that's more and more common than ever before. In Western countries, it seems to be triggered by increased body weight, but also by the high-fat diets that are so common. Good news is it's not a one-way street. If a person has developed diabetes, they can get rid of it in many cases. I'm speaking here of the type 2 or adult onset form of the disease. It's an epidemic in Western countries. We can change that. High blood pressure is more and more common year after year after year. And high salt diets may contribute, but high fat, meaty diets are probably a bigger contributor. They change the viscosity of the blood, or the thickness of the blood, making it harder and harder for the heart to push that blood through the system. Well, we can change that too. If we take the diet and change it to a significant degree, about 3/4 of people can come off their medications. And when you check their blood pressure, it's actually lower than when they were on medications. If we don't tackle this epidemic, though, high blood pressure contributes not only to heart disease, but to strokes, sometimes which can be very dramatic and very sudden, where a blood vessel bursts in the brain and suddenly a person loses the ability to speak, to walk, and from that situation recovery is difficult, and it takes a very great long time.
When properly fueled, our body is almost disease-proof. Right now we have a nation suffering the effects of a disease-causing diet. We have 54% of Americans die of heart attacks and strokes, and about 35 to 38% dying of cancer. This doesn't have to be.